In a civilized and tolerant country like Canada, with self-proclaimed feminist Justin Trudeau as its prime minister, you'd expect women to feel safe and equal. But something seems to be festering here. I'm in Toronto, and while it looks quite peaceful now, in April 2018, an attack took place which expressed a deep-seated hatred of women. Where does such misogyny come from? And how does Canada deal with it?
Breaking news from the Global National Newsroom.
Hello, I'm Donna Friesen. We're breaking into regular programming to bring you news of an incident that has taken place in Toronto. Just after lunchtime in Toronto today, a van plowed into pedestrians along a busy street.
10 people left dead, 14 people were injured. Now, the victims were predominantly women. When asked if women may have been the target, police said that hadn't been ruled out.
The day that it occurred, by the end of the day, when I was going home, I was very angry. Why this happened. That's what the emotions that I had. I'm not a drinker, but that day I went home and I poured myself a shot, really. And I'm not a big drinker. I may have a couple of drinks, every so often, but that day I needed it. It was very angry at what they have done. We received a red alarm, which is the highest alarm that we get on our buses and streetcars, which indicated to both of us that it was a very serious call. Angelo got out and assisted a lady that was injured here. She was struck, I believe it was her
It was the
grapple,
first
right?
impact. She was struck on the shoulder, back of the head, and pelvis area. She had fallen over to this side and was in some shock. And then the second victim was laying right around here somewhere.
So I rolled her over to check for vital signs, and those vital signs were absent. And then I looked down and I could see bodies all the way down the street. So I just moved down to the next one. It's unfortunate, but you just have to keep moving.
We had no idea where the suspect was because he was quite a ways down the street. I think it was approximately 7 minutes until Officer Lamb had him under arrest. During the investigation, I think a lot of information was released stating that he had felt he'd been wronged by women in his past, and that was his specific target coming out onto the street that day. And when you look at the victims that were struck, they were primarily women. So, I mean, certainly upsetting from my perspective, being female, and I'm sure everybody has, wives, sisters, daughters. Nobody wants to see that happen, but I think in his specific situation, he was definitely targeting women.
This wasn't the first attack in Canada that specifically targeted women. In 1989, a male shooter killed 14 young women at an engineering school in Montreal. The perpetrator had been rejected by this school, and he blamed feminism. After the Montreal massacre, a group of men from Toronto decided they had to stand up against misogyny. They founded the organization White Ribbon.
Humberto, I saw some really nice shoes over there.
Yes.
Can you show me?
Yeah. So these are actual shoes that have been worn before.
You
Not
wore
me.
these shoes?
No, not me, but some participants have.
So why did you not wear these?
They're a little bit too high for me.
Yeah,
They're a little scary.
So can you show me the shoes that you are going to wear today?
I think, well, there's a couple of options. I think I
this
may
is too
walk
easy.
in these, but it's
Yeah.
easier to walk. I kind of thought about these as well, but I think they're too high. But I think these are my favorite. And so I may try these on.
Yeah. So why is it called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes?
It's about that saying, you don't understand, life until you walk in a person's shoes, right? So Walk a Mile in Her Shoes is about men trying to put themselves in the shoes of women to understand the discrimination that they experience, the violence that lots of women in our community, in our society, in our homes experience. And it's an expression of solidarity and allyship.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what did white women do after the van attack?
Our walk took place just a couple of months after it happened. So it was very, very fresh in everyone's mind. It ultimately made it an issue for our Walk a Mile in Her Shoes as well, and talked about the importance of men attending and speaking out, and the need for us to speak out against misogyny and toxic masculinity, to address those kinds of terrible attitudes and stereotypes and hatred.
Walking a mile in high heels. It doesn't seem to be such a sacrifice for most of the men here. They appear to be enjoying themselves, while the cause is quite serious. Every 6 days, a woman in Canada is murdered by her boyfriend or husband. But it's better probably that this is a joyful experience, encouraging many men in Toronto to strut around the city and challenge toxic masculinity.
It's been 10 years of walking a mile in her shoes in Toronto. Men, your example here today is so important. Today, we walk because we believe and support survivors of gender-based violence. We walk because we want to role model gender equality, respect, and equal relationships for our peers and the younger men and younger people in our lives.
You're looking really sharp.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
this is very stylish.
Yeah, this is our third year, and the first 2 years we wore track pants, kind of like it was a sporting event.
Yeah.
So this time we figured we'd dress a little bit more fancy.
Yeah. And he has also been participating?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. So why are you doing this?
Why are we walking?
Thanks so much for taking pictures.
To raise awareness for gender-based violence, especially for women and girls.
That's really good.
Yeah.
But this was probably your idea, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a single parent, right? So I'm trying to raise them the right way.
I really want to know, why is this personally so important to you to do this?
Well, so I, as a young boy, I grew up with violence in my home. And when I was 18, I had to leave home because it was no longer safe for me. So it's a personal issue for me because it's happened in my family. It happened to the women in my life, and it happened to me as well.
What do we want? When do we want it? Now! What do we want? When do we want it? Now! It's time to stop! It's time to stop! What do we want?
I'm a writer of The Handmaid's Tale, which has now become a very well-known international television series. In 1983, 4, 5, when I was writing it, we were already seeing a backlash against the late 60s and the 70s, and a number of people were voicing these opinions. So there are actually a number of people in the United States who would like to see a totalitarian theocracy in which women are second-class citizens, or possibly even third or fourth-class citizens, as they were under the Puritans of the 17th century.
So we're specifically looking at Canada.
Yes.
Do you see anything of a backlash against feminism in Canada?
Well, of course, because there's always backlashes against anything. So sure, there are these men's rights groups and and so forth. But these are largely presences on social media. It was Mary Beard in England who actually hunted down one of these young men who said he was going to cut off her head and rape it and things like that. And he turned out just to be just sort of an ordinary teenager who didn't realize that what he was saying was really quite violent and unpleasant. He thought he was just fooling around.
So you think they're not that dangerous then?
Well, of course, they inspire people who are, because they take it literally. Jokes are often the vehicle for those kinds of opinions. People get out of it by making these things and then saying, oh, I was only joking. But they weren't.
Is it a joke or is it dangerous? That's also the question when it comes to the Proud Boys, a network of fraternities founded by a far-right Canadian media personality. Online, they appear unashamed of being sexist.
Hi, I'm Amy. Great meeting you for the first time. I'm Tim Kelly. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Tim.
Awesome. Let me show you around here.
Hi, I'm Blaze. Nice to meet you.
After several violent incidents that North American members were involved in, the image of the Proud Boys is not that great. They are suspicious of the media. It was only after many promises to show their views fairly that this fraternity agreed to be filmed.
And we're the Southwestern Ontario Proud Boys.
All right, and what does that mean, being a Proud Boy?
It means we're a proud Western chauvinists who refuse to apologize for creating the modern world. One of our tenets is we glorify and we venerate the housewife, which means we hold the housewife in higher esteem than we do just about anybody.
That's right. No matter what I do out in the field for work to earn an income could not compare to what my wife does at home with my children.
And if your wife would want to bring in the money?
Oh, she's more than welcome to.
Let's ignore money.
Yeah, she's more than welcome to.
All right.
I have no complaints if my wife wants to. Right? She prefers to, and I appreciate it, that her job is to delegate where the money goes.
All right. So I understood that you don't really like feminists.
Oh. Well, we like women. We don't like.
That's a long conversation. The one thing I think is very important is that you're talking about, if you're anti-feminist is one, you're looking at an anti-misogynist or women-loathing or women-hating, whatever the term is. I think that's a misnomer. If you're looking at the Proud Boys or any fraternal organization, we're talking about venerating the housewife, venerating the family, and knowing what's important.
But girls have to be girls, right? I read that on the website. That you long for the days when girls were girls and men were men.
Well, yes, that's true.
Women have certain traits that men are not capable of.
Of course.
Right? Men have certain traits that women are not capable of. Right?
Like?
Well, women definitely make better mothers.
It's natural to them.
Yeah.
Nurturing comes natural.
It's a lot more natural. Right? If I was left alone with a toddler, I wouldn't have a clue what to do.
But your wife would.
My wife would.
There was a social experiment at one time where boys were given dolls and little girls were given trucks. And when they asked the little girls how they liked the trucks, they went, shh, the trucks are sleeping. It's men and women.
So you think this cannot be changed?
I think
just the way it
in
is?
general there are exceptions. Obviously,
Yes,
there's
there are
very
exceptions.
exceptional people.
I mean,
But
if
in
you
general,
force
on
change,
average,
it could
statistically.
probably be changed at some level. But why would you want to force that change?
Changes that subvert traditional masculinity may make us all feel freer. But to many, such changes are rather upsetting. The controversial Canadian psychology professor Jordan Peterson seems to have given these people a voice. He has become famous worldwide because of his self-help advice, but also because of his criticism of what he sees as left-wing gender activism gone wrong. What do his predominantly male fans find so attractive about Peterson?
So my name is Charles, and I think I first got into Jordan Peterson's work before he became a YouTube star, before he kind of got broader attention.
I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson because I think people should not be afraid to say what they think out loud. And I think that people right now, at least in Canada, are pretty often afraid to say what they think out loud.
My name's Jordan, and Jordan also, and I am a fan of Jordan Peterson, I guess.
The most important thing that he taught me is balance.
What are the most important things to focus on, and how to align yourself as a person well? And that helped me to improve my life like crazy.
Having meaning in life is very important. The fact that you need to have meaning in order to be able to overcome adversities.
I've always wanted a family. I've always wanted children, but it's not enough just to want it. You have to actually do something about it, right?
I've had a lot of problems with who I am as a guy. Not that I have a problem with my sexual identity, but the representation of men in society and the role of, like, the gender roles, right?
I kind of rearranged my life to make it so that I could potentially find someone. And what happened is that eventually I did. Like, I'm engaged now. So the big effect that, that had on me is, I'm engaged now. And, the funny thing is I actually met her at the Jordan Peterson meetup. That was not expected.
50, 100 years ago, it was clear what a man has to do, what a woman has to do. But recently, since women have come into the workforce and pretty much they do whatever that men did before, so for many men, the question comes up: well, what makes me special? And what am I supposed to do?
I don't think men are encouraged. I think they're discouraged actively right from day one. There's an undercurrent of ideological feminism that grates on my nerves.
Now, what kind of feminism are we talking about? What do you object to? What exactly do you object to?
The idea that there are no differences between men and women, which is the standard social constructionist line, is only indicative of an ignorance of biology that's so profound that it should be criminal. So there's many differences between men and women, and these are not trivial matters, and they have not a determining effect, but a crucial effect. The social constructionists know absolutely nothing about biology, nothing. And their ignorance of biology is so profound that they don't even think that they need to know anything about biology because it's not real. It's all a social construct. But what are we going to do? We're going to force little boys and little girls to be exactly the same? We're going to set up a huge bureaucracy to start to hyper-socialize them when they're tiny so that they become identical in every way by the time they're adults? You really think that's going to work? You have to be arrogant beyond conception and cruel to think that such a policy would be either viable or reasonably implemented.
Want a picture on my bike?
Definitely.
You gotta get in this side.
How? I know nothing about motorcycles.
It's like a horse. Your right foot.
It's like a horse, you gotta get on from the right
Press
Okay.
this button. Press it.
Can I turn it off again?
Yeah, you can turn it off right here.
Okay. Which
Like
side?
that.
Oh, thank you. So what got you started?
My husband has a bike, and he didn't want to take me for rides very often. So I got my own license.
Yeah, of course.
And my own bike. Now I can go whenever I want.
That's really cool.
We needed a color for our group, and one woman, she told us about her daughter had been murdered by her boyfriend. So we were all devastated. We all got on our bikes the next morning and we went to the dollar store. We all picked up a purple bandana because purple is kind of known worldwide for a color to be violence against women. So we all put it on our wrists so that when we did our biker wave, people would say, "What's with the purple?"
girls, we are drawing attention to violence against women.
Right.
And you all have some connection to this, right?
Yes. I was married to a military guy that has PTSD, severe PTSD. I never knew when I came home what to expect. I had to walk on eggshells. Everything was my fault. So in the end, I've thought very little of myself. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought that I deserved it. And in the end, he did some things that I still have a lot of problems talking about. He threatened me. He told me to be intimate with him when otherwise he would leave. I didn't want him to leave because in the end you think he's the only one that you can be with. And so I did what he asked.
He would come home in a drunken rage, and if I even said anything, that was it. I was black and blue. I've been thrown out on my driveway. I had him trample on top of me. I was cut all down my arms, my back. If I said anything wrong, he'd slam the door, into my face. I've had cracked ribs because of being jammed into a door. And I didn't know what to do. So I started to reach out to the women's shelter. And you want to know the sad thing is I just found out rather recently is his present significant other is receiving domestic violence right now from him.
Yeah, so he never...
He's never dealt with it, and now he's got somebody new to pick on.
Boys are still mostly raised to be tough and girls to be sweet. It's a gender role division that feels natural because it's what we know. But it's also this division that can lead to pain and violence, when men don't know how to be hurt without hurting others, and women must simply bear it. Here at the Toronto Newsgirls Boxing Club, Savoy Howe is teaching women to stand up for themselves. Savoy made the news when she challenged a misogynistic pickup artist to fight her. But as you may understand now that you see her, he did not take up that challenge. So did she do well?
Oh my God, she hits like she's got a brick in her glove. Make your sound, Popcorn.
She's called Popcorn.
That's,
oh yeah,
right.
It does sound, yeah. So what are their names?
So that's Cactus.
Cactus?
So Cactus, the wind can't even move it, right? And you're dangerous to the touch. And Pinky is just Pinky. Look at the mean face.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's a girls' boxing club. So
Right.
why?
I'm in my 27th year of boxing. I spent the first 14 in very male-dominated clubs, which was an awesome training ground. When I started bringing students in to train them, they were very intimidated because guys are big and sometimes you got to slap their knuckles. And then at some point, I had a chance to have the gym to myself. And I brought my gals in. All of a sudden, they were carrying themselves different. They weren't nervous about what was going on around them. And I was like, okay, whatever this is, we need more of this. So that's when Toronto Newsgirls started.
So why is it so important for girls to do this?
It's good for self-confidence. Sometimes women will come in and, they'll kind of come in like this because it's like there's so many myths attached to boxing. And within one class, I show them how to hit properly, and we give them access to a heavy bag, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, I had no idea I was this strong. I've spent 26 years working with survivors of violence as well. I mean, a huge percentage of women are survivors of violence, and yeah, it transforms them. It's pretty powerful knowing that you can take care of yourself when, somebody was abusive to you, whether physically or mentally. Yeah. Man coming through. This is what we do to men. That's the man.
So I get to beat up this guy?
Yes. Can I wrap you up?
Yeah, please.
Okay,
yeah, because
okay.
I don't want to do it like this.
Let me get you some wraps. Here's a story I tell everybody that starts with us. So imagine you're in a strange city, which you are, and you're walking up an alley. You get to the end of the alley, there's no exit, fine, turn around to leave. As you're walking out of the alley, you notice that someone has entered, and it kind of looks like something's going to go down. For people who have never had martial art or self-defense training, it's easy to go weak at the knees.
Yeah.
But you look down on the ground and you see two hammers. So you're like, pick them up. And the hammer is a wicked weapon. It's a rock on a stick that you give momentum to. So these are your hammers, ka-tunk, ka-tunk. Solid rock, solid stick. What I do is teach you how to use the rest of your body to piston out the hammer and to pull it back.
What should I do with this guy?
Turn your fist into a rock on impact. So it's like rock, relax. Rock, relax, yeah. Rock, relax. Yeah. Okay, now send him a message that says, shut up. Sit down. Yeah. That's it.
30 years ago, we could have shared something about parenting, of course, but I'm not there anymore.
I didn't have a dad, so it's difficult for me, A, to know how to walk like a man, or B, how to raise a son, both by proxy dealing with the ex-wife and trying to show him how to be a man in the world.
I'm estranged from my children for the last 2 years. I had thought that the avenue to get to them was through their mom, and her response was, I don't want you in my life.
We didn't have any kids, but we had a dog, and she took the dog, and she said, I'm going to the vet, to take the dog to the vet. And then she called me up and said, I've left you. And I was like, why did you do it that way? I didn't even know that you were thinking about leaving. You never talked to me. And she said, well, I was afraid you'd be violent.
I could probably, give you many, many illustrations of the type of emotional and physical abuse that I took in my marriages. And I'm like, looking back over the years, feeling like, shit.
My wife, she was very, very rude. Yeah, at that point. I understood I had to rescue myself.
She had some very loose hands, so she liked to hit. I'm not little, I'm over 6'3", she's 5'4". She got really loose and in 3-week time frame decided she wanted to punch at me 4 separate times, and on the last day did it with my son in her arms. I was out the door. I was gone.
I want to cry, I can't. I get close, but I can't get it out. I want to rage. And the only time I can ever really kind of sometimes get in touch with my deeper emotions like sadness is when I'm alone. I can't do it with other people. I think in this time of the human history, sometimes the role of the man is not clear. Yeah.
What the hell are we going to do without men? You look around the city here, you see all these buildings go up. These men, they're doing impossible things. They're under the streets, working on the sewers. They're up on the power lines in the storms and the rain. They're keeping this impossible infrastructure functioning, this thing that works in a miraculous manner. They work themselves to death, and often literally. And so a little gratitude for that is in order. And it's very useful to tell everyone, not just men, that they have an important role to play, a necessary role, and that if they act properly and honestly and forthrightly, that they can put their lives together and they can help their families and they can make their communities better, and that that's not toxic masculinity, that appalling phrase. It's what keeps the world going round.
I think that we live in a culture that is slightly to quite suspicious about men. We have stories of toxic masculinity and patriarchy and men oppressing women and
steady diet of it all the time.
It's quite, there's an undercurrent of hostility that I think most men feel at some level. And this is one place we can come and know that that culture isn't here.
But do you feel like this group is not accepted?
Oh, it's not really well known, but it's not common for men to meet in groups like this. There's lots for women.
When I was trying to leave my marriage, literally the only place I had choice of was 2 homeless shelters. And that was it, that was all.
When I did my search for resources for anyone, or me specifically, there weren't any. This was basically it.
We feel more for women than we do for men. When women are suffering, we want to rush around and make it right. When men are suffering, we're not as concerned. For thousands of years, we've expected men to be the protectors, and the ones they've been protecting have been women. So men are the police, men go to war, etc. So it's just built up that we empathize with women so much more, that it's hard, even with good intentions, to be gender equal.
The vast majority of people killed in wars are men. The vast majority of people who are killed in dangerous jobs are men. It's not like either of us had an easy time. I mean, the huge problem for women prior to the 20th century was death in childbirth. At least we got that under control. And you could say, well, women didn't have all the rights that men had for quite a substantial amount of time, but it wasn't like most men had rights. Christ, what percentage of Eastern Europeans were serfs until 1850? The vast majority of people in the feudal ages were essentially slaves. The men didn't have any rights. Most men didn't get the vote until very late, and women got it afterwards, but not that many decades afterwards.
One of the funny things you find in history is that after really catastrophic events, such as the Great Mortality, the Black Death, women's position improves. Why is that? Because so many men died, they needed the women to do the jobs. So similarly in World War II, women did quite well. Come the 50s, in particularly the United States and Britain, there was a concerted campaign to get women back into the home, because why? The men were coming back from the war. They needed the jobs. So I remember that pretty well, and probably so does Jordan Peterson, because that is probably the decade that he is channeling. He probably thinks we should be in about 1955, in which Mom was in the kitchen whipping up the cake mix.
To construe the history of the human race as the pervasive oppression of women by men it's a story invented by women who have never had a satisfactory relationship with a single man in their entire life. Not a brother, not a father, not a husband, not a son, nothing. Because if they had a satisfactory relationship, they would not be driving that narrative forward.
Men like Peterson obviously feel attacked by the idea that there is a systematic advantage to being male. The issue of gender equality seems to have become a battleground where each side can be easily provoked. It's time to talk to the other side, the social justice warriors. I'm meeting with Lillem, a feminist metal band, which tries to fight capitalism and the patriarchy through song. Can you tell me what was this song about? Because it was a little bit difficult for me to hear all of the lyrics,
Apathetic Dog is about how patriarchy kind of floats its way down to the very young and teaches them the wrong things and how it can become quite ingrained. And apathy is the after effects of that kind of bullshit.
Now, there are people who say there's no patriarchy. So what would your response to that be?
They're probably benefiting it the most.
Sorry, they are?
They're the ones benefiting it from it. The
Yeah,
ones
you
that
think
say
so?
it doesn't
The one-
exist. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It is an ignorance and an apathy that precedes people. It's taught generation after generation, and as I mentioned earlier, it becomes so ingrained that they just don't even think it's real.
So much from it.
Yeah, and when you're benefiting, you don't want to see it. Exactly. It's like the difference between equity and equality, right? Like, equity means that you can get the same sized box and everyone can stand on that box and look over. But if the shortest person still can't see over on the same size box, then that's not equality. Equality means having the right size box for the right person so that everyone has an equal opportunity.
I feel like it's really invalidating to people who are living that every day, the oppression, to start to say polarization is bad and identity politics, you don't want to feed into that. I think it's really minimizing how much people are suffering every day.
We need to hear from the guys as well, because there's a lot of talking about guys. So what does it mean for you to call yourself a feminist?
Well, they said it perfectly. Total equality for everybody. You know, it's a big umbrella of topics, but at the core, that's what it means to me. Total equality.
Really, the patriarchy is very real. I've had to do a lot of unlearning of things that were kind of ingrained into me when I was growing up, and just societal pressures more than anything. I actually had a very great childhood and was very fortunate in that way.
What did you have to unlearn?
Oh, just making jokes at women's expenses. I'd say, like, just really crass humor and things that, even until a few years ago, were still sort of part of my vernacular, but it's taken a while to kind of realize that, like, jokes at anybody's expense, like, in that sort of poor taste, is really a privilege that not a lot of people have.
As uprising has to happen. Like, I don't think equality is going to come in some like sweet written way. We're all going to sign some piece of paper and everyone's going to be a feminist. Like, and then that word can just, go the wayside, because then we'll all just be humans finally.
The reason feminism as like a term, or feminist as a term, is a problem isn't because of like the macro level idea of feminism and that like there should be equality. It's that no one can agree on what that word means.
If we mean equality of opportunity, I'm absolutely for it. I think very few people would be against it. But if we mean that every occupation should be 50% male, 50% female, 50% of bricklayers should be women, 50% of kindergarten teachers and nurses should be men, then I find that actually a bit ridiculous.
I think that feminism has been hijacked. It's become a vehicle for hatred for men, honestly. I know it sounds a little bit extreme, but my experience with feminism and modern feminism is there's a lot of animosity toward men, and I don't think that really is productive.
I've dated women, and then the relationships have dissolved. And like, obviously everyone needs to feel entitled to have a voice. But at the same time, people do now feel like really emboldened to, to use terms like, toxic masculinity or like misogyny as just like a way to talk about people they don't like. And I think that's irresponsible, and it's happened to me, and it is, to say the least, frustrating.
Look, there's no reason that the human race shouldn't take advantage of the talents of every woman on the planet. But the oppression narrative, the group identity, the insistence that structures of authority and competence are only predicated on power, that's wrong. It's not only wrong, it's far worse than wrong. It's retrogressive, it's tribalistic, it's dangerous, it's an incitement to violence, it's resentful, and it's malevolent.
Well, now we know that the driver accused of killing 10 people and injuring 15 others may have been motivated by an extreme form of misogyny. In a Facebook post, suspect Alec Manassian referred to the incel rebellion. Now, incel is short for involuntarily celibate, and it's a term used by an online community of men who blame women for their non-existent sex lives.
In a neighborhood of Willowdale, around the corner of Yonge Street, I'm searching for Jesse James, who organized a vigil after the attack, trying to bring the community together. Jesse is also a youth worker, so I'm curious to hear his analysis.
Had you heard about the incel movement or community before?
No, I hadn't heard of it, and most people hadn't either. And then when we found out by that weekend that there was like 40,000 people, active members on this relatively dark web incel group, that was astonishing to find out. There's a lot of angst amongst men, I think. When you are upsetting an imbalance that has been in place for thousands of years, and when women are effectively fighting for, but not winning quite yet, a fight for equality, there's going to be a lot of people, men primarily, who are upset about that. Justin Trudeau campaigned on enshrining feminism within his cabinet and within the representatives that he had of his government. And I think he was overwhelmingly voted in, Justin Trudeau. And then, 2015, half of his cabinet was women, half of his cabinet were men, and he was celebrated for that.
It's an incredible pleasure for me to be here today before you to present to Canada a cabinet that looks like Canada.
So I think there is a fringe in our society who's responding to the change in our cultural and social values that will turn to violence if they think that they're under threat.
This man who drove over his victims was resentful and full of hatred. He had hatred for God. He had hatred for being. Why? Because he was rejected. I'm not excusing it. It's terrible. There's no excuse for him whatsoever. He should have gone out and made some friends. He should have gone to the gym. He should have put himself together. He should have got educated.
Why do men feel threatened by women? Margaret Atwood once asked a male friend. He said, men are afraid that women will laugh at them. Why do women feel threatened by men? She asked her female students. They said, women are afraid that men will kill them. That's the fear I grew up with. It's why so many of us constantly smile, trying to please fragile egos. But the power is shifting, making some men feel devalued and lost. For his fans, Peterson is considered a life raft.
Did Jordan Peterson help me get a girlfriend? The answer is yes, and the reason is that I was dishonest with myself and was in a kind of mode where if I was trying to impress women, then I would try and engage with them in a dishonest way.
People, when they lie, think that they're only lying to other people, but for Peterson, every human has a relationship with reality that exists in a sense that's like almost material. So he argues that when you lie, not only are you deceiving other people and deceiving yourself, but you're literally like making it difficult for you to tell what the truth of the world is because you're distancing yourself and perverting your relationship with the world. And I heard that, and I mean, for a week, it was all I could think about.
When I was younger, I was like a nerd in school, and then I was desperate to like shed my nerd persona and get with women and be cool, and it was a very a desperate set of early years for myself. And what happened was I was kind of running away from my nerdy past, and it made me very dishonest because I wouldn't want to be in a friendship where I would be talking openly about my past and what kind of person I was and so on. And so that was a huge problem.
And so one of the things he talks about like this is a direct Peterson quote, he says, you never get away with anything. And then you think about it and you're like, oh, you never get away with anything, which means you have to answer for everything you ever do, which at first is very scary, but then immediately becomes very liberating, because it's like, okay, well, now it's like I don't have to present a face to people. It's like I am in the aggregate what I am all the time. So then you sort of just have to like become something that you're willing to be in every single scenario.
There's no shortage of people who are barely clinging to the edges of the world with their fingertips, and now and then one of them slips off and does something terrible. And it's very difficult to draw general conclusions from that, except that such things happen.
So what happened was the van started 5-6 blocks that way, and he came down this street here. So there are people hurt here. At the corner where the lights are, I think 4 people got hit. 2 of them died along with my daughter. So the 2 of them were part of the 10 people.
He would have come through the intersection, gone through the light, went onto the sidewalk here, and drove between the tree and the door. And there's some scratches on the wall still. They may have repaired them, but
Right here.
right over here.
Yeah, right over here.
It was right here. Yeah.
But this is where it was for my baby.
If it wasn't such a nice day, her entrance is over there. If it wasn't such a nice day, she would have probably been on that side and would have gone through these doors. But it was the first nice day of the year. So we think she was taken a long way back.
Can you tell me about Anne-Marie? What was she like?
She's one of those beautiful spirits. She really went the extra mile for a lot of people. She's one of those spirits that just there's not very much she wouldn't do. She's very
Altruistic.
Yeah, very altruistic.
She cared about people.
She really did. She just did a lot of that kind of thing. And this is the irony of it all. And the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure this monster that did this, I'm pretty sure that had my daughter met him somewhere like this, I'm pretty sure it would have been very kind to him, you know, because apparently this gentleman is, you know, incel, all these other kind of things, misogyny and all these kinds of things. But she's the kind of person that would have probably tried to, you know, just communicate with him, just talk to him, just, you know, but just that kind of a person. She just go to anybody and just speak with them.